and welcome to Art with Mrs. Cap. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at the Hudson River School, and it's part of American art history. So we're going to be taking a look at what exactly was this period of art history in the United States, what does it mean, and what are the key, focuses of this type of artwork. All right, so a little bit of history. In the 19th century, a group of American painters dedicated themselves to cultivating a style that would have its roots in the New World rather than looking back to Europe. So a lot of the works that were being produced looked back to Europe, and they wanted to create a style that was truly American with this newfound, existence and this new national identity and so forth. And so they wanted to create something that was truly American. So they were inspired by untamed landscape in the surrounding areas and filled with ideas of exploration. These landscape painters helped create what is now known as the Hudson River School. The environment is filled with drama and emotion. The wide, expansive spaces are dappled with warm color, and depictions of man are avoided in favor of terrain. So there's very little depictions of humans and, civilization and so forth. They really wanted to focus on the untamed world and nature and land that surrounded them. From 1825 until its popularity began to decline around 1870, the group of artists associated with these heroic landscapes helped shape the way we view early America. From the early work of British-born immigrant Thomas Cole to the oil paintings of Albert Bierstadt and Frederick Edwin Church, these landscape paintings were often the first depictions of parts unknown. So this was before we really had, photographers documenting and taking pictures of this. This was how they captured these places that people didn't really go to. Whether it's views of the Yosemite Valley, the American West, to glimpses of South America. These paintings are a testimony of a critical time in American history and the development of native art culture. All right, so the origins, the foundation of the Hudson River School can be found in the Romanticist paintings that took place in Europe by the end of the 18th century. The way the Romantic painters, particularly England and Germany, embraced landscape paintings on a grand scale was highly influential in this particular style and development of this style of art. While some influences are based in Europe, the Hudson River School is decidedly a national style, coming at a time when American painters were looking to define art in their own country that was their own culture of art. For generations, artists had made a return to the old world in order to study the great masters. But increasingly, these artists wanted to cultivate a style that was uniquely American. This desire, coupled with this particular moment in history, made for the development of the Hudson River School. So in the mid-19th century, when this style was really coming to its own and kind of towards the end of that, America was starting to come out of the Civil War in like the 1860s. So manifest destiny was a popular philosophy during this time, that Americans were destined by a higher power to expand west across North America, and that had really started to take root and take hold. At that time, industrialization was underway and rapidly transforming the country. So cities were really changing and becoming industrialized, and that's kind of part of what fuels this this work of art and this style of art, this body of art. So not only were artists more adventurous and leaving New York to explore parts unknown, but the resulting wild landscapes became a symbol for the unconquered continent. The love for untamed nature was something not typically seen in European landscapes, making the work decidedly American. At the same time, these depictions of wide open spaces ready to be settled gave hope to a population coming out of a war. Fresh and unspoiled, this new terrain was free from the scars of battle. As a whole, these paintings point to the spirit of adventure, freedom, and discovery that exemplified the nation during this critical time in history. So let's look at one of the leaders of this style of art, Thomas Cole. He is known as the father of the movement, and he spent a significant amount of time in the area of the Hudson River Valley after taking a steamboat up the Hudson in 1825. From there, he hiked the Catskills, and the resulting paintings are the first landscapes of the area. Once Cole died in 1848, the mantle was taken up by a second generation of painters who expanded the location of the landscapes. The second generation. All right, so moving into the second half of the 19th century, painters like Albert Bierstadt and Frederick Edwin Church were particularly sought after for their monumental landscapes. Built on Cole's principles, Church was his pupil, and they also depict the heroic landscape that played on emotion and patriotism. Church's 10-foot wide Heart of the Andes was a sensation from the moment it was painted in 1859. Based on the artist's trip to Ecuador 2 years earlier, an estimated 12,000 to 13,000 people paid 25 cents apiece for the chance to admire it when it was on display in New York shortly after completion. Church played up the sense of drama by exhibiting the painting in a dark room with a single spotlight on the work. It later went on to tour to 8 American cities and London, where a large crowd was drawn into the magnificent landscape. When it eventually sold for $10,000, it was the highest price ever paid for an artwork by a living American artist at the time. Bierstadt, who was of German origin, is particularly known for his monumental paintings of the American West. Only Church rivaled him in fame, and it's thanks to Bierstadt that we have early paintings of Yosemite. His presence was often requested by early explorers of the American West, who admired his technical prowess coupled with his subject matter. His series of paintings showing the Rocky Mountains were highly successful, as they allowed people who had not viewed these areas of the United States to see more of their own country. All right, the legacy. So today, the Hudson River School is recognized for its importance in developing a native art culture in America. The Hudson River Valley prides itself on being the home of this movement, and it's possible to visit Thomas Cole's home and hike the areas that inspired his evocative landscapes. We also have several members of the school to thank for the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Met, which we talk a lot about in our podcast episodes. Church, along with John Frederick Kinsett and Sanford Robinson Gifford, were among the founders of the museum. In fact, today there are a number of important works by these artists in the collection. Another important collection of paintings by Cole and Church can be found at the Wadsworth Atheneum in Hartford, Connecticut. As these painters were close friends with the museum's founder, nearly 25 of their paintings reside in the collection. And that concludes our lesson on the Hudson Valley School of Art in the United States as a purely American style of art, the first truly American formal style of art. Obviously, we've discussed other, indigenous art that truly is like American art, but this is the first truly American style of art after the colonization and after Europeans moved to this new land and really wanted to develop a style that was a departure from European art. So this is our first example of that. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I will see you next time on Art with Mrs. Cap. Bye.